Hey everybody, I hope y'all are having a good evening. I am hopping on here for a bit. I know it's kind of late, but I think that time and days are all kind of blurred right now. So I'm here to do it now because this is when my schedule will allow me to hop on here on live. But I hope that your week has been as well as can be expected. These past few days for me have been rough emotionally. It's been really disheartening to kind of see all of the videos of people who are dealing with the coronavirus and all of the stories about people who are dying with coronavirus. It's been really disheartening to see those stories, and it's been hard to digest those stories and to see them. But I've been looking at them just to get information about people's experience and just to kind of stay informed. Of course, this is a constant, media story. This is a constant topic. So it's not good to be in the midst of the coronavirus news cycle 24/7. So I definitely don't condone that. Definitely take a mental break as needed. But I have been seeing the videos, I've been seeing the stories by people who have been dying, and it's sad. Like when people are dying, when people are suffering from sickness, it's sad. So just out of, just human compassion, it's been hard to watch that. So that's been, emotionally difficult for me lately. And it was kind of, it had me kind of feeling down. So I can't say I was depressed, but there's steps to depression. Like there's levels to it. And one thing that depression and fear have in common is that they paralyze you. They make you not want to do anything. And once I started kind of getting into a place of apathy where it was like, I don't want to really do much right now, I knew I had to do something to like get this off of me. So I actually had like a praise party in my kitchen, and I was in there dancing and just getting that feeling off of me, shaking it off, dancing it off, all of that. So once I did that, I was ready to get on here and do this message. So I wanted to bring up something else about mental health as well. I know that like everybody keeps on seeing these posts about people don't need to be going outside, telling people to stay in, and how people going out is contributing more to the madness of people getting infected more and more. And I agree with that. I think that people do need to stay in the house as much as possible at this time. However, I don't see it as a totally selfish act. It may be selfish, but I see it as a coping mechanism, honestly and truly, especially if you're thinking about the fact that before the coronavirus event hit the U.S., there were a bunch of people already living a life that they might have felt was hopeless anyway, and a bunch of people who were already living recklessly. This is like just another day to them. So that's not everybody, but there are people who have always had bad coping mechanisms for stress. And this is a time where we are required to have strong mental health, a strong mindset, and a lot of people they don't have that anyway. So that's how I see that situation. When we're looking at these people who are hitting the club and they're out and they're just trying to do something to switch up whatever, the monotony has become of day-to-day life. So moving on from that, I came on here because I have a message. I have something that I hope will be encouraging to everybody who's watching. I have a story I want to share. So maybe 3 or 4 nights ago, as I was like waking up out of my bed, like right when my eyes hit, I'm barely up for real, but this thought comes to my mind, and it says, "Take heart, for I have overcome the world." So I'm familiar with the "I have overcome the world" scripture, and I'm thinking, okay, God's speaking. All right, let me, that was immediately comforting, but it made me want to go and look up some scriptures. So I went and I looked up everywhere where it says "take heart" in the Bible, and I came across this story in Acts, and I had never seen the story before, but when I began to read the story, God was speaking through that story about just some encouraging things. So I want to share that story with y'all tonight, and it's in Acts 27. So in Acts 27, so we have Paul, who is at this time a prisoner, and he's being transported to Italy, I think, so he can stand trial. But he was a prisoner at this time, and he has been turned over to a Roman general to get transported to Italy. And they're going from city to city to try to find a ship that will take them to Italy. They finally find a ship. They get on it with a bunch of other prisoners, and they start sailing. But it was kind of turbulent on the ocean. There was a lot of wind. And whatever the season was in the Bible at this time, it was what I would describe as maybe like a hurricane season. Here, it was like some kind of stormy season. So the ocean was known to be dangerous during this time. So they're sailing, there's wind, and it's turbulent, and it begins to get dangerous. And Paul starts to, realize that their lives are in danger. And he says, "Men, I perceive that this voyage will end with disaster and much loss, not only of the cargo and ship, but also our lives." Okay, but nobody listens to him. So the Roman officer, they hear him, but the Roman officer is paying more attention to the person who's driving the ship and the person who owns the ship, and they get together along with the other people on the ship, and the majority of them decide that we're going to keep sailing, and if we can get to this other city, this other harbor, that will be a safer place for us to rest. And they decide that's the best course of action. So they continue to sail, and the wind calms down, and it starts to look like they've made the best decision. But suddenly, out of nowhere, like this huge storm comes up with these cyclone winds, and they basically lose control of the ship. So now they're pretty much lost at sea. And they start realizing that, they're going to have to do something in order for the ship to not capsize. So they begin to throw things overboard on the ship to lighten the ship up. And as they lighten the ship up and they're still stuck in the storm, they begin to give up. So what does Paul do in his wisdom? Paul begins to fast. So it says in Acts 27, 21 through 26, "But after long abstinence from food, then Paul stood in the midst of them and said, 'Men, you should have listened to me, and not have sailed from Crete, and incurred this disaster and loss. And now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For there stood by me this night an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I serve, saying, Do not be afraid, Paul. You must be brought before Caesar. And indeed, God has granted you all those who sail with you. Therefore, take heart, men, for I believe God that it will be just as it was told me. However, we must run aground on a certain island.' So after a couple of weeks, the sailors start to realize that they are indeed getting closer to land. So as they get closer, they get scared that they're going to hit some rocks. So they go ahead and they drop the anchors out of the ship from the back of the ship. And they go to the front of the ship to pretend like they're going to drop the front of the ship anchors as well. But what they actually do is they drop a little rowboat. They try to drop a little rowboat into the ocean so that they can hop in it and try to escape. So they don't believe the plan. They don't believe that, God has spoken to Paul and said that they're going to be safe. So Paul says to them, unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved. So they let the ship go into the ocean, and they continue sailing, and they can't do anything at that point but just pray for daylight to come and hope that they can be safe. So as day was about to come, Paul told them all to eat. He said, "Today is the 14th day you have waited and continued without food and eaten nothing. Therefore, I urge you to take nourishment, for this is your survival, since not a hair will fall from the head of any of you." And when he had said these things, he took bread and gave thanks to God in the presence of them all. And when he had broken it, he began to eat. Then they were all encouraged and also took food themselves. And in all, there were 276 persons on the ship. So when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship and threw out the wheat into the sea. So when day actually did come, they see land, and they decide that that's where they're going to need to go and anchor the ship. So they start to sail in that direction, and they suddenly hit ground and become shipwrecked. So the front of the ship is stuck on the land, but the back of the ship is destroyed, and the ship starts breaking into pieces. So the other soldiers on the ship are like, we need to go ahead and just kill the prisoners, including Paul, because we don't want them to hop into the sea and somehow escape. But the Roman officer, for some reason, decided that he wanted to save Paul. So he told them that, no, we're not going to do that. That's not the plan. Everybody that can swim, jump off the ship, swim to the land, and everybody else grab onto what you can grab onto, pieces of the ship, and float to land. So that's what they did, and everybody escaped safely to land. So what God was sharing about this story to me was this: if he promised that he was going to do something, he is going to do it. And he's saying, why would he lie? So, you probably heard the scripture that God's word will not return to you void. God promised me some things, right? And God is saying that he has promised some of you some things. I don't know if it's a business. I'm not sure if it's a business idea, if it's something material, if it's a husband, if it's a wife. I'm not sure what it is, but God is saying, why would he lie about that? Why would he not bring that to pass? If he said he was going to do it, it's going to happen. So in the story, they didn't believe him. Like, they didn't believe that God had told Paul these things. They didn't believe that there was a promise that they would all be saved. Even at the last minute, they were trying to jump off the ship and save themselves. But what God said he was going to do came to pass, and it didn't look like it was going to come to pass. Everything looked like it was going to be a disaster, right? But that's where we're at right now. Like, it doesn't look like things are going to work out for us. It doesn't look like things are going to be okay. But God is saying, if I have promised you something, already, it's going to happen for you. So we have to trust in those promises at this time. We have to hold on to those promises in this time. And we have to believe that it's going to happen. So another thing that was being brought to my mind was the topic of idolatry. So for some reason, that's what God has been putting on my mind, on my spirit. It's like he was saying that, there's a lot of idolatry going on right now. And he had me even look up this little lucky Chinese cat that a lot of Asian businesses put in their stores. And there's a Asian business near my job that I see it every day. They got the lucky Chinese cat in the window. And when you think of idolatry in the Bible, I know that's like an old term, but it's still a very relevant thing that's happening. That actual physical idea of an idol is what you mostly think of. And when I looked up this Chinese lucky cat, it was saying that, it gave a name, I can't remember the name of it, but it was saying that this cat is a talisman, it's a lucky charm. And that's what we think of when we think of idols. And that is an idol, but, you know, God is saying idols can be more subtle. And that's the snare of idolatry. People don't realize how subtle idolism can be. And, you know, if you're putting your reverence and your trust into something other than God, then that is something that is likely to be considered an idol. And for a lot of people right now, it's money. People are idolizing money. And it could be other things. It could be your job, your business. But God is basically saying he wants to be first. He has to be first in your life. So this is a time to put God first in your life. And also, you know, for the people who know God has shown them something, that God has revealed something to them, that God has told them that he was going to do something for them. This is the time that if you have something like such as a business idea, this is the time to be making those plans and solidifying those plans and building that business or idea, especially if it's something that pertains to building up the kingdom, because God is saying that this coronavirus downtime is just a season, and at some point we won't have the same amount of downtime, the same amount of opportunity to build those ideas. There are a lot of things that may be getting put in front of some plans that you might have had in the past, but this is the time to put it in the forefront and go ahead and work on it. Try to put it in motion now. This is the time for that. So I hope that story was encouraging to you. It was really encouraging to me. And the particular scripture was coming from John 16:33. So it says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So I know that things look chaotic. I know that things look crazy. It don't look like it's going to be good. But God is saying I've overcome all of that. And I found that encouraging. I found that hopeful. So, you know, I hope that you guys can lean on and rely on God during this time. I really feel for people who don't have faith in God at this time, just because you don't really have something to put your faith in right now. Every structure, every particular system is being shaken, and it's not something you can 100% put your trust into. So I hope that you all are staying encouraged, guarding your hearts, guarding your minds, guarding your ears, guarding your eyes, because it's a lot of trying things happening right now, a lot of trying stories that we're hearing, and you want to make sure you're protecting yourself and not only taking in the news, not only taking in what's on Facebook, so that you can keep your mental strength up. Also, lastly, but not least, I want to say thank you to everybody who has an essential job that is not an option for them to go to work. They have to go to work. From the doctors on down to environmental services, to the pharmacists, to everybody who's working for the city. Just so many things that we probably just take for granted at this time. You know, I'm grateful for you guys, and I know that everybody else is as well. So that is it. I hope y'all have a wonderful evening. Bye.